Sarap. Delicious.
The pork barbecue skewer is the most iconic Filipino-style barbecue. Sweet and tender with those deliciously glazed charred exterior, it's sure to become a hit in your party. Today I'm going to show you some tips and techniques on how to properly prepare pork barbecue skewers. It may seem simple enough, but there are certain things you can do to get that perfectly tender, moist, and juicy pork barbecue skewers. Regrettably, there is one thing I won't be able to share with you today, and that will be our secret marinade and sauce recipes. Bummer, right? I know, and I'm really sorry. We decided to bottle the marinade and sauce and make just a small business out of it. Gotta make ends meet, right? Anyway, there's still tons of stuff you are going to learn here. Hope you guys like it. For me, the best cut to use is the pork butt because it is tender and has good marbling, which makes it more moist and flavorful. Just cut it up to about 2-inch blocks like this. You can actually trim off some of the fat if you wish, but to me the fat actually contributes to giving the barbecue more flavor. But it's all about preference, so it's up to you. Next, try to cut the meat across the grain. So this is the grain of the meat. So we want to cut across it so that the meat becomes more tender. Because if you cut with the grain, that meat will become tougher to eat. So it's best to cut it across the grain like this. So slice it thinly like this. Also not too thin, not too thick. So the thinner it is, actually the more tender it is. So this is how it looks like with all that marbling with the fat inside. Looks yummy already. Next, prepare your bamboo skewers by soaking them in water for a couple of hours. This is of course optional, but this does help protect the skewers from burning during grilling. Now the skewering technique is very important. This is where no matter how tender your meat is, the barbecue will almost dry out and be tough if you do not skewer it properly. Now this style I actually do not recommend. Most people instinctively think that you have to do thicker cuts of meat and skewer it flatly. But actually during grilling, this meat will actually dry out faster and will be tougher to the bite. Now this next technique is actually the right way to skewer the meat. You do it by folding the thin cuts of meat and slightly compacting it together. Folding the meat actually helps keep moisture in the meat intact during grilling, giving you a moist, juicy, and tender barbecue. Plus, the folding creates little crevices which hold the basting sauce better during grilling, thus making the barbecue more flavorful. Now, the folded meat I used here was a fairly even-sized rectangular cut, so it was easy to fold and very much symmetrical. But what if the meat is odd-sized or small or too thin? Which is normally the case. In this case, this is how you fold the meat. You can actually just fold it and twist it however which direction you like and just slightly compact it afterwards. The meat could still actually form a fairly symmetrical sized barbecue. Even for a thin piece of meat like this one, you can just fold it and twist it around and compact it. Now that looks fairly symmetrical to me, don't you think? Now next, I'm going to show you another wrong way to skewer the meat. Most people don't compact the meat and they just lay the meat extended across the bamboo skewer. This will actually dry out the meat faster during grilling. Even before you get those nice grill marks on the barbecue, the meat would have dried out already. So I do not really recommend skewering the meat like this. So these two on the right are the good ones, and the ones on the left are the ones that I do not recommend. Now there are different sized bamboo skewers. There's a 6-inch one, and actually this one is a 10-inch one that I cut to a 7.5-inch one, and of course there's a longer one that you can use depending on how you'd like to serve it. Now if you'd like to serve the barbecue like an appetizer, better to use the 6-inch bamboo skewer and just put in a couple of meats so it's not too heavy. Or if you do not care to have a bamboo handle on the end, you can just fill up the whole barbecue skewer with meat, so you can just throw the barbecue in the middle of the grill and not have to worry about the bamboo handle burning out. Now the last one, of course, is you can use a longer bamboo skewer and leave a longer bamboo handle on the end so that people can easily get a grip on the barbecue skewer. This is perfect if people will be moving around while eating the barbecue, especially during backyard or picnic settings. Now we're gonna use the barbecue marinade that we use in our restaurant. You will notice later that our marinade is very liquidy and it's not thick. By being such, the marinade penetrates the meat better, unlike if it was as thick as a ketchup would be. Now there are two ways to marinate your meat. Method 1 is skewering raw meat first, like what I did earlier, placing it in a container like this, then pouring marinade in it. The good thing about doing this is that skewering is easier and less messy. The bad thing is you will need more marinade in order to soak the pork skewers completely. Let it soak for at least 4 hours or overnight for best results. Now the next method is you marinate the meat first, then you skewer it later. So for this, you also marinate the meat for at least 4 hours and overnight for best results. You can either use a container like this or you can use a Ziploc bag to marinate the meat in. Personally, the Ziploc bags are more convenient to use. Now, skewering marinated meat is a bit more messy and a little harder. You will need a small pan for this to keep the juices from spilling all over your table. So you do the same thing when skewering the meat. You fold it and slightly compact it together to keep the barbecue moist and juicy when grilling. You will also notice that the marinated meat most of the time kind of falls apart. So skewering will be a lot more challenging compared to just skewering raw meat. Now comes the fun part, the grilling. But first, you have to prepare your grill. So you get a piece of foil like this and line it up straight on the grill about a third of the way. So this foil allows you to grill the meat on top of the heat in the middle of the grill while protecting the bamboo skewers from burning up. Also, have a cup of water handy in case there are flare-ups in the grill. Like anything, charcoal always gives you the best flavor, but certainly a gas grill will also do. Now line up the meats just at the edge of the foil, and again this helps keep the bamboo skewers from burning up. Now this is important. You have to resist from turning and flipping the skewers constantly. You have to be patient and let the heat slowly penetrate through the meat. If you constantly flip it, you will have charred meat on the outside and still raw meat on the inside. So just a little shout out, my former chef Richard Davis taught me that. So thank you so much, Richard. Now just before flipping, you apply the barbecue sauce to baste the meat so it gets that sweet and flavorful caramelized coating. Now again, the barbecue sauce is a thicker sauce and is really best for basting the barbecues. And it has banana ketchup, which is very uniquely Filipino. If you do not have the barbecue sauce, you can use the marinade instead. Or mix the marinade with any type of ketchup that you have, about 50-50 ratio. Now it is time to flip the barbecue since it is already cooked on the first side. Notice also that this is just my first flip since I allowed the first side to cook through completely. Also, after flipping, you also baste the other side with barbecue sauce. Shorter grill time equals lesser moisture loss, so it is really good not to flip the meat constantly. And pretty much after that, you just try to have an even char all around the barbecues. So you have that nice, sweet and flavorful char on the outside and a very moist and tender meat on the inside. And that, my friends, is the very iconic Filipino-style pork barbecue skewer. Enjoy!